Welcome to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan and
Talking of relationships, Anil, one of the keenly debated topics is use of AI and how, technology is altering relationships that we have with each other as well as with some of the things that we use. Now, marketers at least have found some purpose for AI and or technology in the form of, whether we call it generative AI or some amount of AI that, Cadbury kind of pioneered with some of their brands in advertising, etc. So tell us a little bit about your view of technology and its relationship with consumers and how marketers should view it, and then talk to us a little bit about the specific use case that Cadbury went in with. What was the thinking there, and how do you think it is going to shape out for rest of the marketing world? How why should they take it seriously? Why should they look at it in the future?
Yeah, I think phenomenal. No, I think it's irreversible change that's happened, right?
Yeah.
With the way technology. I think at the fundamental level, what technology is enabled is a one-on-one conversation, which is two-way.
Yeah.
And I think what is important is again based on facts. To be clear, that is a two-way one-on-one conversation important or not? The journey of ROI, you will realize that there is nothing more valuable than a two-way one-on-one conversation. So, everybody is in the journey of personalization. A two-way one-on-one conversation is your Netflix button, is your Uber button, is your Swiggy button. It's two-way because it knows based on data what you've been doing. Right? So it's listening to you. You're inputting into it, it's listening to you, it's two-way. And it's constantly taking information from you, serving it back to you. That is the end state for every brand. The sooner we acknowledge and start working towards it, the better. That's clear. I mean, I see it working no other way. Of course, there are intermediate steps, right? And there are the fundamentals don't change. Again, as I said, in terms of the fact that what is important is monthly penetration. For monthly penetration, monthly 1+ awareness is the important one. That's it. You need to get there. How do you get there? And what's the ROI journey there? The end state is a two-way one-on-one conversation. That's what technology is enabled today. The ones who can crack it for their categories and brands in a way that is meaningful to them at scale is the answer. So I think the sooner people start doing things rather than wait for things to change, wait for clarity to come, wait for models to be built, wait for companies to come and offer solutions, it's futile. I'm seeing this from a point of view of being in an ecosystem which is large enough where I can enable this, and many people may not be able to enable this. But the reality is, in a bootstrapped world where resources aren't, they're anyway enabling it because they are bootstrapped.
Yeah.
They're anyway saying, so that's the interesting thing that you learn from these businesses, right? That it's no longer a funnel, it's a pipe.
Just explain that a little bit, Anil.
So in this whole notion of awareness, attitude, behavior, we always believed that it's a funnel. And even large brands today, and that's what Byron Sharp says, right? And that's where his problem is with performance marketing. Performance marketing is a cylinder, is a tube. It's not a funnel. The only thing that matters to me is behavior. I don't care if you know my brand because it doesn't help me. The meter starts ticking only when you come onto my app, click me, and start transacting with me. Till then, there's no value.
Right.
So for a lot of people, it's a tube. And of course, when you listen to experts and a lot of people talking about it, and people who've been fully deep in performance marketing understand that that's not necessarily the way. It's about, well, I still have to widen the tube.
Yes.
Right? And how do I widen the tube and not get too obsessed by what's there at the bottom of the funnel is what the performance marketers are realizing, from financial services to auto to tech, etc., etc. Large brands and consumer brands like us are still in the world that let's continue to remain funnel. Yes, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of complexities happening, etc., etc., etc. We'll figure out. But I think the provocation is that, okay, yeah, of course you'll figure out, but the journey to ROI is for those who start fast.
Yeah.
So I think that is the fundamental starting point, and hence you're constantly looking at ways and means to say what ideas exist. So I think that's the second point, to say that, okay, I mean, I'm clear about this, the two-way one-on-one conversation. Now the question is, that's technology, and the question is, how does your brand access it? It's not going to be about being at mercy of technology and waiting for a technology solution. It again starts from the brand.
Right.
And what does the brand want to say or do? So what's the brief? And then as you're evaluating ideas, to figure out the filtering of the idea is not anymore about a one-way mass message.
You did this on Cadbury celebrations even before ChatGPT happened. So there was one geotagging one year during COVID, and then the Shah Rukh Khan campaign. Could you just walk us through the thinking behind this and how AI came into the mix?
And it was very interesting, right? I think it is a journey of discovery. I think the fundamental switch we made at about 2019 was the fact that we moved from keeping our gifting business and Cadbury gifting, Cadbury celebrations as a standalone brand to saying, let it become a manifestation of what Cadbury Dairy Milk or Cadbury stands for, which is about generosity, right? And generosity in small ways, not in big ways. We want to make the world a generous place, one bite at a time. And
Right.
as I said to you, making, just acknowledging and creating a moment of connection in a world where connection is getting lost out. You need to take a step beyond what you're doing to build a connection. That's the generosity we're asking you to show. So don't be in a selfish silo. Be generous, connect. And in order to do that, you need an enabler. That's the chocolate. So that's the role of the brand, the generosity. And that journey had begun in 2019. 2020, when COVID came, and that's the other thing. It also answers your first question on what's your reflection on purpose. The beautiful journey, right? In 2020 March, 2020 April, when things shut, right? In 2020 April, we couldn't produce, etc. So April, May, and then this whole government started taking a view on what should be produced and what shouldn't be, right? And this whole notion was we will produce essential stuff.
Right.
And we were deemed, internal in our organization also, we were battling to say, what do we do, right? And we were deemed non-essential.
Okay.
पहले रोटी कपड़ा चावल दाल शाब आ जाए, चॉकलेट बाद में देखा जाएगा.
Right.
It was a beautiful knock moment saying, what WTF. So who are we? And we are largely impulse and out of home kids are our large consumers, kids and teens and young adults, college going, school going kids who have this as a treat. So business is going to go. And how do we convince the government and how do we convince authorities to say that we are not as important, but we're not. You can't ignore us. And the journey we saw through 2020 was the fact that consumers realized that, look, I'm at home. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm fully tense. I need that moment where I need to let go. I need to do something to keep myself going, keep myself positive. I need to keep my kids happy. I can't take them to the movies. I can't take them somewhere to a restaurant. They're stressed. They're not able to go to school, meet their friends. What do I do? So there was a role. So we started pivoting to say, okay, let us do small things at home. It's no longer, you're not able to meet. So there was that notion, right? So, and we saw a response. We saw very good response already. We also started doing things like, acknowledge the guys out there who are risking their lives.
Yeah.
Well, we are at home comfortable. And that's where we created this whole notion of the thank you bar. That idea was there pre-COVID. Where we just wanted to do a nice thing of thank you, say thank you. We rebooted and we were not sure. You know how it is, right? New activity and there's no production and there's no sale. Do you really want to do this? And at this time, is this the right time to say something like thank you and all that? But he said, let's do this. Dekhte hain kya hota hai. And in Q3, actually, we saw the brand come front and center in store. So we said, okay, there is a purpose. We're not taking ourselves seriously. It's a small thing you can do to cheer up people because everybody is stressed, guys.
Right.
Nothing can, until COVID goes away, till vaccines come, nothing's going to change. But at that moment in time, daily I need to square. Right? Imagine working from home, you're not able to go to work, you're stressed. You don't know where your business is going. Everybody's going through that. So role came. We saw success. Then we said, okay, it's not just about people who are consuming our brands. We said, what do we do in Diwali and Rakhi? People are not going to go out, etc., etc. Somehow, the agency cracked this beautiful idea, saying, what do we do for store owners? And there are big customers who are still able to advertise and stay afloat because they have the wherewithal to stay afloat. What happens to small businesses? And that was the starting point. And the initial ideas were messages, saying let's create a message and let's put it during Diwali. Let's put it during, at that point in time, I think in 2020 IPL hadn't happened. IPL was coming in September. We said we'll create a nice IPL message saying this Diwali go to your near neighborhood store and support your neighborhood. And we said let's do a message. Right? And then we said we will create different messages and we will put store names there. But then we said, this is great. This is great to make very nice emotional advertising. But can we push the needle? And how can tech help us there? And that's where our ecosystem comes handy. We were working, we were talking. Google came and said, you know what, you can serve a personalized ad based on pin code. And then we said, okay, wow, this sounds interesting, man. Then we try and do something about this. And we said, okay, we have one message. Put that message out there. You need to still build awareness for the brand. But why don't we create a campaign around this? So when we started, it's almost as a activation idea. It wasn't a core message. But as things played out, as the idea started kind of getting traction, we said, you know what? Why do I need a message when this activation idea becomes a message itself? It was a very, very interesting period, trying to get to seeing which are those stores, how do you identify, how do you get consent, how do you personalize and, get the solution, then working with all the partners, etc. A wonderful journey. So that we were really happy with what we created. We didn't know whether it will kind of land well, whether the technology would work, whether we get scale or not, but we got a lot of success there. And then, of course, we said, okay, where do we want to take this forward? We started by saying we can serve personalized ads, and that built awareness for the consumers to do something for the local stores. But still, how could we further equip the stores? That's where the whole notion of saying, okay, how can I create a ad for each store? Many people don't know is we saw this technology come through, and that's why I keep talking about when we talk about technology to say that it's never that you get one answer and you crack. What we don't see is a lot of experiments that keep happening on a regular basis. So prior to the Shah Rukh Khan ad, we actually had a Hrithik Roshan saying personalized Rakhi message to your sister.
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
So, which is saying give your message and Hrithik will speak it out. Again, AI enabled. Right? And it was Hrithik's message to her sister. Now, there, obviously, it had a certain set of traction. It was also something that really did well, but it was a tech novelty. Finally, you would want to wish your sister, right? I mean, what is all this gizmo about getting Hrithik to say a personalized message? I mean, it's nice. But fundamentally, it cannot replace you wishing your sister directly, right? So it's a nice additional gimmick. It's an additional personalization tool that you add as a layer to your gift. But it was not really, solving for a problem. But we had the tech. But the tech was glitchy. It took time. We could get maybe a few thousand downloads, etc., etc. So come Diwali, by that time we could work out and Refresh.ai, which is the partner, we were able to work out the solution. So the problem was, how many words can you personalize?
Right.
Okay. And the tech is what? It's machine learning, right? The first time that the ad got created for one of the stores, it took, if I'm not wrong, don't shoot me if I'm hugely wrong, but somewhere between 15 to 20 minutes.
Wow.
Okay.
Nobody will want to wait for so long, right?
Right.
So by the time we got to the 1,000 numbers and then we got to the 150,000, 180,000 of the number, it had come down to 1 minute.
Nice.
So the sales officer in the store could say कि आपका ad बन जाएगा. He's got it done, and the store could make his ad within a minute. So the technology takes time, right? I mean, that's the other bit, that you have to keep throwing balls in the air to say, what could work, what couldn't work. Try small, and then at the right point in time, when there's a great idea, you have an answer to pivot.
Interesting, actually. Quite a few nuggets there, Anil. Not just about how to think about technology, but also about continuous experimentation in the service of the brand and the consumer, and then seeing what sticks, then pushing the needle continuously, pushing the mandate, and trying to find solutions to that. And I think one of the unstated things, which possibly you referred to, is about great partnerships, having the right set of partners, agencies, etc., who are continuously living and breathing the brand, and continuously pushing the needle to try and provide the best possible solutions to you for anything that you want to put out from a brand perspective.
Absolutely. I mean, I cannot underemphasize the importance of an ecosystem. I think we've always believed in it. Both of you have been part of the journey, but I think we have been very, very intentional about it in this area to say, convert our JBP partnerships with a Google and a Facebook to almost create a roster of ideas that we want to keep churning out, a roster of business problems where you say, okay, how can you help us solve? And how can you think about solving? So again, and some of these problems exist, right? And sometimes again, technology at the right point in time solves. So we've always been talking to Facebook and Google about birthdays, and the fact that you have the data on birthdays. Why can't we do something personalized on birthdays?
Right.
I've been teasing, etc. Never found a solution. But the kudos to the team, and you see what's come out now, which is now with the power of Gen AI, your ability to create at scale personalized content makes this idea come alive as my birthday song. As a great example. So, yeah, I think the ecosystem to be at play. And I think the other interesting thing is the ecosystem at play quite often without a brief.
Yeah.
You have the brand purpose and you know why you exist. And you're constantly churning out. You obviously know the big tentpole briefs that are out there. But not really wait for it and not really get stuck up to say this brief, this problem, this time. And this business challenge, that becomes very limiting. And then you load up a lot of pressure onto the ecosystem to say there are many things to solve for. On the other hand, you have the machinery running to keep generating ideas, and sometimes the idea fits, or in some cases, you just put it out. I mean, that's very, very, very critical, right? Because otherwise, there's so much pressure on a brand marketer to solve his or her in-ear business deliverables. Like
Right.
beyond a certain point, and beyond a certain point, they wouldn't want to do something where they know that they're going to take money away from their core and it's going to hurt them.
Yeah, yeah.
And one of the interesting examples I'll tell you, which one day will scale, is what say the Silk team has been trying for the past few years by building what is called a boyfriend day. There's a notion called boyfriend day that happens sometime in September, now October, I think. So to say, Valentine's is in Feb, and that's primarily in one direction.
Yeah.
And very cute thing called a boyfriend day. It's speaking scale. Apparently, it's quite big with Gen Z. Maybe it'll scale with the Gen Alphas. And how can you then you say that, okay, try experiment, it's okay, it doesn't need to get scale there. At some point in time you'll get scale.
Awesome.
But how do you experiment with it?
Speaking of ecosystems, and during the COVID lockdown, you managed to launch a new product under lockdown when everybody was working from home. And it wasn't like another chocolate or another biscuit. It was complete new category. You got into the cakes category. How was that even possible? I really can't imagine that working out in a logical, sane manner. What happened? How did you go about doing it?
It's not just about cake, but it's about, it's not about just an NPD, right? It's about any initiative in that sense. I think, as you know, I mean, there would have been a calendar
Right.
that was already at play and that needed to happen. And I think I must admit that for the one cake that you saw launched, there were also 7 other initiatives that you pushed because we had to take a few calls. So the choices were made to say at this point in time, we will want to focus on the core and protect the core as against really spread. But this is one important initiative, which was, as you said, this is a new category entry, that's a new segment entry, a lot riding on it. It is also linked to kind of the broader strategy that that particular brand was chasing. It is interesting. I mean, it was not just marketing that pivoted to technology, right?
Right.
All functions, everybody pivoted to technology.
Exactly.
And not just my organization, all our organizations, all around us, right?
Yeah.
So imagine doing a trial without R&D flying, and you're seeing it live using a GoPro. Now you think about it, it's doable, right? Why not?
You actually watched R&D trials via GoPro.
I didn't. R&D did. So R&D didn't travel, right?
Excellent.
So,
Yeah.
I mean, many people pivoted in different ways. There were times in our latest factory in Sri City in Vellore, in Nellore, the manufacturing managers were running the line from home, seeing the process parameters live on at home and making some changes if required based on
Wow.
input coming. So
Yeah.
that's the idea for you. So an integrated digital factory can be run from anywhere. I think that's tech at a broad level. But I think more than that is agility as an organization. I think, and all organizations, I would say. But from our experience, of course, we had a leader, a visionary leader, who's always believed in building resilience and agility in the organization as a theme, even pre-COVID. We had a huge knock even during demonetization. A lot
Right.
needed to happen to bring the business on track. And one of the things that I think sets our leader apart from many others that I've seen, Deepak, I'm talking about Deepak, was his focus that when things are good, prepare for the rainy days. So, and the converted the whole demonetization journey into a case study to say, okay, the other thing that we need to be prepared for. COVID, within a few weeks, you had an action force ready
Wow.
to say what needed to be done and what are the meetings, what are the cadence, who does what needs to pivot, what needs to stop immediately, what actions to be taken, how do we change. And you can't run a monthly process when you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. So
Right.
changing from a monthly process to a daily process almost of running business. And I'm sure many others have done it. Something incredible learning experience working under Deepak to say how important is agility and resilience in the organization. And to be clear, what changes to be done, and then how do you want to operate? And how do you create this notion of BCP, right? So I think that's those are some of the things that we learned. And I think the third thing that in the spirit of agility and resilience is Deepak as a leader is a visionary in tech and in terms of what needs to be done in tech. What we've achieved over the last few years in consumer marketing, as well as in sales, as well as in manufacturing, is a testimony of his leadership actually in Mondelez.
Interesting. Very interesting, actually. A little bit of a marketing specific question, Anil. All marketers want to create brand preference, want to create pull amongst consumers. Few of them are able to possibly influence consumer behavior. right? Cadbury in the olden days, when we used to see it was a product that the parents used to give to their kids, and with the Shimona ad, it is as it is talked about, was able to influence the consumer behavior where they were catering to now the kid within themselves. One to just understand from you, and possibly have you reflect on any such brief that you worked upon, anything that you attempted upon. What were your abstractions there? If any of your young marketer is listening to this, what would your advice to them be? How should
Correct.
they go about it?
Very well said. I think you used a good example, and I think the important thing to acknowledge and remember is that the toughest thing to do is behavior change,
Hmm.
and that's
Yeah.
ideally the last thing you should do. Highly unlikely that you'll be able to do it yourself. There has to be some external forces that play, whether it's technology or whether it is what's happening around us in terms of policy, etc., that would drive those changes. Otherwise,
Hmm.
incredibly difficult to drive behavior change. So what you try and do is ride on current behavior
Hmm. Hmm.
and either find a reason for consumers to replace current behavior. When you're able to do that, you're able to get much better traction at much larger scale. And a good example, the two good analogies, comparisons are one is chocolate and how chocolate consumption has ridden on existing sweet consumption. And we
Hmm.
always knew meter consumption was there.
Hmm.
Right.
And whether it is Shimona that opened up and made chocolate consumption accessible, indulgence acceptable amongst teens and adults, and it kind of rid on the external theme of the 1990s and liberalization and how that society was opening up. But through that, and that created this notion that it was okay to indulge. Everybody was consuming chocolate. It was not that they weren't, but it opened up this notion that I could consume it without indulgence. That it kind of opened up the whole notion of guilt-free indulgence, and that made it accessible to a much larger set of people. But the much larger behavior, larger scale of the category creation subsequently also happened through Meetha. And in Meetha, it is
Yeah.
all about riding on existing Meetha consumption and
Yeah.
inspiring people to say that this was a modern Meetha or an aspirational modern Meetha. Right? And as we rode on that also, the journey was also to say that great, it is an acceptable modern Meetha. But for the penny to drop also, you needed to associate with those Meetha occasions that were relatable and that were scale.
Yeah.
When you started with the meter journey and you said दिल को जब खुशी छू जाए कुछ मीठा हो जाए, a casual
Hmm.
moment of happiness and have
Hmm.
something sweet, it didn't work. Right? You
Hmm.
needed something which was a very clear trigger of saying passing of exams, and then you said जब पप्पू पास हो गया, या पप्पू पास हो जाए कुछ मीठा हो जाए. You had to pick up a big actionable moment for the consumer to even acknowledge and then substitute. So even behavior substitution and acceptance is also has a huge inertia. Because we might think that I'm coming with a brand solution. Quite often, that's the whole thing, right? I am excited about a new message. The consumer doesn't care, right? Because he's happy with what he's doing. We think that we're going to come, as I'm going back to the point, my reason to exist. Consumer is leading a happy life till then. It's not as if you're trying to solve for something new. So I think there's this pressure testing. How is the change going to come through? I think is an important bit, and getting those right insights are important. And quite often it is through a journey of discovery. And of course, then again, we don't talk much when you talk about ecosystems. You talk about execution ecosystem. You don't talk about the discovery ecosystem, right? In as much as our research partners and the journey that we've been on with them, and 20 plus years, in some cases 30 years of relationship, that allows us to
Hmm.
mine those insights and tell us which are those right insights to go after and which are the ones which are not necessarily scale. So that's one at a broad level to say that behavior change is nay impossible, and it's ride on existing behavior. And as you're writing on existing behavior, how do you create that inspiration? And how do you find those right creative insights that allow you to latch on to something that the consumer understands and be inspired by? Other interesting example that I have to share with you is on dark chocolate, right?
Ah.
How do I drive dark chocolate? And there isn't adequate acceptance of the taste. And
Hmm.
again, there it is a much tougher job of behavior change to say accepting something which I fundamentally don't like to put my mouth in, put into my mouth.
Hmm. Hmm.
Again, interesting. When many years of work, some good solid strategy work, resulting in nothing, and then you actually then try and decode what happens. Where does this acceptance, and what is interesting in this context of behavior change, what has really fascinated me over time, and we've spoken about it, I'm sure, and those listening in should understand, is how categories get formed
Hmm.
and how some categories hit scale and some categories don't hit scale. When do they hit scale? Why do they hit scale? What happens? What are
Hmm.
those moments of unlock?
Hmm.
I think one is us understanding our understanding of unlock from a chocolate standpoint, our understanding of an unlock from a biscuit standpoint. Right? Why is biscuit so big in India, not elsewhere?
Right.
Hmm.
Biscuit equal to chocolate in India, in the rest of the world, it's 6 times, 3 times, or 4 times of chocolate. in India. So what happened?
Hmm.
Why is tea so big? Why is coffee so small?
Right.
What happened?
Yeah.
In coffee, what has opened up? Right? Coffee is again an unacceptable taste.
Hmm.
In many parts, it's an alien taste. So what drives acceptance, what's not, what's happening in wine? So we studied those categories, tried to take learning from it, but eventually we also figured out that there is a certain journey towards creating this acceptance. In some cases the journey is slow, and
Yes.
in some cases the journey is fast. In some cases again you have to wait at the right moment, and as you know, in many cases the journey may not come.
Yeah.
It might still remain a very niche opportunity. And you think about white chocolate and as against dark chocolate, and how white chocolate, we know, based on all that we know around the world, is going likely to remain niche. So I think I'm kind of rambling a little bit, but I think the broader point is that it's one of those very interesting facets. And I think in a lot of cases, behavior change is difficult, slow, and there could be some external forces that unlock. And if you're able to spot those external forces, nothing like it. Otherwise, ride on existing behavior.
No, makes
And which is
sense.
why,
Yeah.
fundamentally, occasion strategy is so important in category building.
Hmm. Hmm.
To say, why is occasion strategy so important? Because those occasions exist. Consumers are doing something. All you need to do is play a part of that occasion. Right?
Hmm.
And look at this, right? I mean, 10 years from hence, we all have seen, we were, pretty much there when we started. And today, Valentine has become bigger than Rakhi.
Correct.
Right? So it's an occasion you're ridden on.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than
Yeah.
create a new occasion, which is always going to be difficult.
That's a good example, Anil. And I think inherent to that is identifying some of these occasions and taking moonshots. Like you said, some of them will stick, some of them won't. I remember 2009, perhaps. I think 2009, 2010, we also had a sugar free chocolate.
2008, 7, 8.
Possibly.
Yeah.
So I don't
We
remember, but
had
we
not
had
the sugar
something
free. We had the light Cadbury light, Dairy Milk light.
Cadbury
Was what
light.
we had.
Yeah. So
I was managing IPM that time. It was called Project Sugar All.
so again a moonshot. Possibly the category didn't become as big, didn't become as, but you know, about 20 years back. So that's a big one, huh? For some
That's
company to launch that even before sugar-free, dark chocolate, etc., were a category to even speak about. It's a moonshot that Cadbury took. Now some of them will stick, some of them won't, but taking them is what matters.
absolutely, absolutely. And having the space to do that, for the leadership to create that space and to create
Hmm.
that thinking, to say we need to have a view on the future,
Right.
and not just think about. And hence, I think what has really excited us, and I'm sure the same thing holds true for you, Sudeep, in the business that you're in. It's all about category creation, right? And so fascinating
Yeah.
that as you're
Yeah.
thinking about vectors of category creation, some of them work, some of them don't, but you keep at
True.
it.
True.
Anil, I'm going to indulge. I mean, I want you to indulge us in a little bit of storytelling. I mean, you've given us a lot of stories, but this one specifically is very close to my heart. So I'm going to set it up pretty badly for you to scale all the odds. The story of Oreo in India. So I remember for ages there are other FMCG companies who have been threatening to get into the chocolate business, and they still haven't really done it very successfully. And as primarily a chocolate business, Cadbury launched Oreo in the cream biscuit category, which was dominated by Britannia and ITC, and were playing in the orange and strawberry cream biscuits for kids. And here you were launching Oreo, which was about at least thrice the price of the existing incumbents, and with no known capabilities for launching biscuits in a volume business. So we were selling chocolates in pieces, and we had to suddenly sell biscuits in boxes. And it ended up being amongst the greatest FMCG launches in India. What is the story there? How did you go about it? Because I asked this specifically because we've been talking about the large organization, large brands, and a lot of the listeners are from the startup world with the agencies. And to know, like, even within a large organization, this is pretty much a startup exercise, right? So
Absolutely. Very well said. And I think, when you think about short aside to say exactly what you're saying, I think in our journey, we've pretty much have the journey of a startup. To say we are pretty small and insignificant when we joined the organization to where it is. So it's been, in that sense, a journey of trying out things, failing, learning, etc., etc. When it comes to Oreo, I think that's a very interesting experience that working in a large organization offers you, which is that sometimes you are in that moment where bringing a global brand into your country, which is an invaluable experience. I think so hence the starting point. So one of the starting points of the success of Oreo is Oreo itself. The fact that it is one of the successful global brands, right? Which is unique, which has a unique taste profile, which many people have tried to match, but nobody has been able to match. And there are many such global brands that we all know. There's Kit Kat, there's Snickers, there's Cheetos. I mean, there's so many in the food space, right? We've seen some of them, and the reason they're successful is market after market. They find that there is an acknowledgement for it, for the taste they represent, for the experience. So hence the first answer is the success of Oreo was Oreo itself. So hence the question really to answer is, how did we ensure that we didn't come in the way? That's the real management lesson.
That's very
Very well
modest,
put.
Anil.
No,
But
it's very true as a reflection, because it's a beautiful case study, and all kudos to the people who are managing Oreo before us and the Kraft leadership who were there, who guided us through that journey, right? Because they helped us build conviction. We were a small team that were working on it as a dedicated cross-functional team, and they armed us with information. That's a beautiful story, and it's a story that all of us need to see it. And sometimes you need a case study, right, to prove ourselves that these things happen, right? Black cookie.
right,
Black is not a food color in India. Black means burnt.
yes,
Right. Product test. Every market that Oreo launches, when it is tested with the lead cream biscuit there, or cream chocolate cream biscuit there, it fails. Failed the product test. Did not clear the overall liking benchmarks from product testing. So the leadership says, why do we launch it? And it will be small, it will not be big. So then the notion to say that the first test will always fail. Put Oreo in the house and test after a month. Scores go up.
why is that?
They get used to the taste and then we get addicted to it.
Acquire.
It's an acquired taste. So do not be unfazed by what it is. Don't trade. So our first focus was, why can we make it browner? Can we add Cadbury to it? Can we, we have Cadbury. Why don't we make a Cadbury taste?
But you did add Cadbury to it.
And I'll come to that answer as well. I mean, that is another very interesting aspect, right? And I think, so first message was to say no. You have to launch it in its pristine self. Right. The second bit was, again, as you mentioned in the setup, the category dynamics and the economic models that the current players were playing were very different to the play models that we were used to.
Right.
We had to operate in a very different economic model, and yet we had to manage our costs. So we had to operate at a certain cost that was higher. So the question then was to say, okay, rather than dilute and get to what is the market operating system, can we try and operate at a different level? And even at that different level, we were making a very different business profile, a P&L profile. Again, we got a lot of support from the global team to say, we were trying to build a glide path to say we'll become, phenomenally profitable in 5 years. And they came and said, the existing business is there for a certain reason. Learn from them. Don't create a castle in the air which won't exist. So remember that this is what it's going to be. So that again meant as a business, we then understood that if you have to build this business over a period of time, we need to fund it to something else. And this is where it was important for us to think about our other businesses also as importantly as that. To create the room to say it's going to be a 10-year bloody battle or even more than that. And it's remained that. I mean, that's been the story. So, I mean, building the internal connection is the first thing. I think the second interesting anecdote was exactly to say, we wanted to launch it as Kraft Oreo because Kraft was the company. And I still distinctly remember going for a consumer visit where we were, trying to get feedback from consumers. And we were with Molly, our favorite leader. And we were watching, and the consumers kept calling it, as we were talking to household mothers. They kept calling it chocolate cookie. What is it? It's a chocolate cookie, chocolate cookie, chocolate. They spoke about it as chocolate taste. What do you like about it is chocolate taste, right? I think that the other interesting thing that we understand then, in the market, all the products were about the cream. I mean, so this is a great opportunity to pivot to about what's great about the cookie.
Cookie. Excellent.
Right?
Yeah.
The cookie was a chocolate cookie. So we said, okay, how do we celebrate that? And we said, okay, then Cadbury is a good idea as on the brand. And that was a very, very interesting exercise. And maybe, many people may not know. And those days, many people knew. The last thing you can go to a parent company that has just bought you, say that, no, we want to remove your logo from top.
Exactly.
So you can imagine, the response we got. Right?
Yeah.
Very, very, very polite words. We were told to, a great idea, but no. But then I think that's kudos to, our leadership then to say conviction and how do you build conviction.
Right.
And then we tested it with which company should this brand be. So we went to consumers saying this is a great brand. We tasted it. Now tell me which company could it be from? Could it be from Kraft? Could it be from one of our competitors? Or could it be from Cadbury? And we showed the consumers believe that it is from Cadbury. So rather than getting caught up in terms of what logo, let's do what it takes to succeed. And not only did we set it Cadbury on the brand on the pack, which is one of the first only market
Yeah.
globally that Oreo carried Cadbury logo. We also ended our comms with Cadbury.
Cadbury. Yeah.
And so I think that was another interesting anecdote. And I think not only was it about getting into a category that we didn't know, as we got to know it better and better. I think the other interesting thing is we were kings of front of store, and this is back of store.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So then
Interesting.
the whole
Yeah.
notion of bringing the category to the front of store, and we created Oreo dispensers
Hmm.
and leverage the front of store, because that's what we were good at. And those days we were good at dispensers, and we were still building our strength on vesicoolers.
Right.
So bringing the category front of store. And today you see the category is front of store. If you go to a small store today, you see a lot of treat biscuits, wafers, a lot of snacks at front of store. So the treat is front of store. So I think again an interesting insight there. I think creating that kind of cross-functional team to work on that was an important one. I really enjoyed working with Naveen Keswani. He was a customer marketing head. He was a very, very independent thinker, right? So again, the global guidance was one message across from point of awareness to point of buying. And his point was, yeah, TLD is a great ritual that builds the brand. But his point was, it's not going to trigger a shopper. So a lot of battles. In this case, we went against the global team. We said, no, the world's favorite cookie now comes to India. Have you tried it yet? Kind of create that shopper trigger that makes the consumer try it. Small things. But I think bringing that whole bit together, appending a few things that define the category. So define the category rules of the game and then try and break them so that you're differentiated was the reason it was successful. And of course now the journey has been a very, very fascinating journey. Very, very, very fascinating journey of category building and brand building.
Right.
The way it's gone through its ups and downs. In the most recent periods, the way it's exploded. And how again this notion of how taste gets accepted, right?
Hmm.
And we
Yeah.
observed that the moment the taste became democratized, that you have an Oreo cornetto, you have Oreo silk, you have an Oreo cake, you have an Oreo cheesecake, and the fact that most bakeries, as Theobroma has an Oreo brownie,
Right.
just makes that taste so acceptable, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Oreo McFlurry at
Oreo
McDonald's.
McFlurry, yeah, absolutely.
I think even 5 Star now has an Oreo version, right?
Yes,
Yes.
there is five-star
Yes.
Oreo as well, and that tastes damn good if you haven't tasted it. Sure.
It's quite sinful, I must say. So, okay, excellent. No, it's a lovely story, Anil. Thank you for sharing that. I think there's lots of lessons for everybody who is, regardless of whether they're working on a big brand or a small one.
And it's inspiring to say that
Yeah.
a new entrant in the category changed the dynamics of the category, how the category behaved at the point of sale. I think it's mind
Yeah,
blowing.
and it's very interesting, and without sounding pompous, these are just things that happen at the point in time, right? It's interesting you think about this and you think about other categories, and we talk about how change is good for the consumer and how competition is good for the consumer. That all of us through our childhood grew up eating a set of biscuits, and we always see in the category there's a pre-Oreo and a post-Oreo moment.
Right.
Today you go to the biscuit aisle and see how it's transformed itself.
Exactly.
Right, and what's happened. And you now think of many other categories that hasn't happened and what could happen if really people got it right? Think about what could happen in noodles, and I'm in Southeast Asia right now when I see the noodles category here, right? And what it is and the scale it has. Or think of breakfast cereal and what happens when something like a Quaker comes in and changes the rules of the game and makes hot cereal and how the market explodes. It's interesting to observe categories and to see, what could be those moments when competition comes in and category explodes. So I think that's inspiring from as a student of marketing rather than anything else.
No, I think it has cross category learnings as well as inferences which people can take forward. Anil, now coming to your present, you're now the MD, and marketing now is now, the entire marketing team looks up to you. And therefore, your view of how you used to look at marketing when you were the marketer versus your view of marketing now that you are an MD, is there a shift? Is there a change? Is there something that you would now advise the younger Anil to do something differently?
Interesting. It's still early in my journey, Sudeep. I'll be honest to have a very clear answer there, but definitely it means that you're one step removed from the whole marketing process, right?
Mm.
And you're more focused on business.
Mm.
I think the interesting thing you've always had has always been the fact that marketing is in service of the business. We don't want to create a silo, and you all know you've been through the system. To say evaluation is not about how great marketing you do, but how is the business performing, right?
Yeah.
So we always were kept real there. But having said that, I mean, it's a constant journey. It's very, very difficult, and it cannot be overemphasized enough that to know what's happening in the business is a bloody job of everybody. Right, and you cannot take your eyes away from it. Right, if anything, where I'm sitting right now just reminds me and reinforces that thinking. As a leader, makes me aware that what role do I play to build those bridges? Because I could be sitting and seeing things on a constant basis, and there are some moments that I understand now and I appreciate now how a leader thinks. Right, as you know, as all of us know, from a marketing standpoint, some of the way we build our business, attribution to business is always a challenge.
Yeah.
Right, and you think of a leader and you say that, why is my leader not convinced? Why is he so unwilling to attribute enough dollars or enough value to the marketing and what is contributing to the business? Of course, there is acknowledgement, because marketing is the other side of growth, right? You don't have anything else. I mean, because you grow, business grows through the growth of the brand, and that's through marketing. Right. But on a day-to-day business, is the business that you count.
Correct.
Right. So, and then how do you attribute? You cannot attribute on a day-to-day basis. So hence, all that matters is business. So it's completely fair for a business leader to say, screw your attribution, dude, let's talk about business, right? And hence, how do you create and how do you build expectations? The message to the marketer is to be acutely aware that I am insignificant in this month, in this week, today. I am significant in the long term, and hence today I am in service of the business, and I will accept anything that I receive as feedback today as a reflection of what's happening today with all humility, without keeping my ego away to say, no, this is not the way I think about my brand. Oh, my brand is great. Oh, my brand is doing really well. Today's feedback is today's feedback, and acknowledging that if everything is hunky-dory, somebody will come and say, you know what, your brand is firing. I'm really happy. Happens rarely, right? But when it happens, to say, wow, that really means that you're making an impact on the business on a daily basis. And that's the gold dust that you're chasing, right?
Yeah.
Anil, let me rephrase the questions, take the liberty to rephrase the questions Sudeep asked you. Because at the top of the show, when Sudeep said that he reported to you, is when I realized I've never reported to you. You've been lucky that way. But I never felt like I've never reported to you, because even before I was in marketing, from the time I was in sales, you were among the most accessible leaders in the company. And I've seen the access continue even after I've left Mondelez. And I see that not just with me, with a lot of other people that you worked with, may not have directly worked with. So how would you define your leadership style, and how is this possible to stay connected?
My leadership style, I would explain, is as I'd love to collaborate and work with people and be involved in the process of what is getting generated as an output. And I think in my style, I'm able to create a collective sense of achievement. To say everybody feels involved in the success, and the success can be felt. And it's not about creating something that works for me and doesn't work for others. So I think what works for everyone is what gives me fulfillment. So I would say that's what works for me. And I think my approach is to lead with example as against leaders who lead with a vision. So that's an area that I'm still working on. But my natural style is come into the trenches and solve the problem while working with the team. And that again creates that sense of in it together, which is important for a leader to create that kind of traction. I think in terms of connection, Sharan, I think Sudeep mentioned it early on, that gives me energy. Connection gives me energy. Hence, when I invest in it, I get that energy. So hence I find the time for it. And we discuss, right, quite often. It's not about the time, it's about the energy. So I'm sure there are others who get energy from something else that they do, and that gives them energy. And I think the conversations quite often I also see it as equally value adding to me as it is value adding to somebody else. So I think if I'm able to create a situation where it's a conversation where there's a zone of trust, there's a value exchange, and it's equal, and it's not as if I'm sitting in a pedestal and providing advice. I think then it becomes a nice conversation. I think it's also a form of leadership. I'm immensely inspired by our factories and the way our supply chains operate. And there's this notion of servant leadership that supply chain operates in. And the whole notion of IL6s and the way supply chain organizations operate is everything is enabled so that the guy on the line can take the decision and run the line and take every action by himself. So an escalation is only by exception. And when an escalation, the role of the leader is to say, how can I be in service of what you need so that you can be successful in what you're doing? So that's an extremely very inspiring perspective that I am always impressed with the way our factories operate. And not just our factories as in Mondelez, I'm sure Mondelez is great, but also if you just visit a factory and you see how they operate, the whole notion of a factory is that.
Wow.
And a
Very
factory
interesting.
manager is seen
Wow.
as an enabler.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to roll up his sleeves and fix anything. I mean, that's not his job.
Yeah.
So I think that's an inspiring perspective that I kind of take. Yeah, that's about it. I'm enjoying the conversation. That's it.
Lovely. Anil, now we are towards the end of our section. Couple of more things. One is since a lot of young marketers would be listening to this podcast, what will be one career advice that you would leave with them?
I think one career advice that I would leave with them is the best time to be in marketing. It's never been
Hmm.
a better time to be in marketing. So much to do, the world at your feet, literally. Extremely envious of the marketer of today. When I started my career in marketing, I don't think we had as many levers. Maybe I'm guilty of thinking that. Maybe I should have felt even more liberated when I was a marketer. But just in terms of the tools that are available today, I just feel envious. Excellent time to be a marketer. And hence,
Hmm.
the more learning open attitude that you're able to bring in and curiosity that you're able to bring in and to your job, the more you'll be able to absorb, the more you'll be able to experiment and learn. And it's a constantly evolving area. So how do we continue to learn, find means to learn, find connections to learn from, find inspiration to learn from, and keep learning, I think, is the second input. I mean, those two are the most important inputs. It's not an exact science. It's something
Hmm.
that builds over a period of time. So the more we learn, the more we speak, the more we interact, and of course, the more we practice. I think I still am a core believer in learning from practice. Brace yourself for a journey where hopefully you get to practice. Ask yourself whether you're getting enough space to practice. That's the most important thing. The organization that you're in or the job that you're in should give you the space to practice. I don't think any organization or any brand doesn't have space. A lot of it is created by us. The limits are created by us.
Hmm.
So think unconstrained, leverage the space, and keep learning.
Very true.
Excellent. Excellent.
Awesome.
Okay. Last one. You have given us a lot of stories today, Anil. Lot of learnings, beautiful pearls of wisdom, and I'm sure everybody would be very happy with that. But I want to end it with, putting you in a little bit of an uncomfortable situation. We call this the hot seat section. The only caveat is that you don't get to give any diplomatic answers. I will give you options. You have to pick one. That might not be the best option available, but that it is what it is. So think of it as a as a multiple choice question. Okay.
Yeah. Thanks to the wonderful friends I've had, I can roast them. Go for it.
Yeah. Okay. And you can't skip a question. Okay. Again, all of these are opinions. Who makes better MDs, CEOs, CBOs? Guys with marketing background, sales background, or finance background?
Marketing background.
Okay. Marketing would become extremely productive if this team starts becoming an aid versus being a blocker. Finance, manufacturing, procurement, or sales?
Procurement. Procurement.
Procurement. Anil went through his contacts and said, "Where do I have least number
Least
of
number of
contacts?"
No,
contacts.
no, not at all. Not at all. It was an instinctive. I was just listening. I was waiting for which are the ones you're going to say.
Last one. One bad habit of yours that you just can't give up.
Multitasking.
Hmm. Okay, interesting. This one is a little bit diplomatic, I think, but okay, I'll give it to you.
Just said what instinctively came to me. I was not being measured.
No, fair. But why would you say multitasking is a bad habit?
I tend to get distracted soon. So it's not a good thing. I think increasingly I'm trying to find ways. And my wife keeps reminding me that I'm a complete failure here. But I'm trying to find ways that can help me create those spaces where I can have deep concentration. It's just a huge problem. It was always a problem. But in a post-digital world, everything is episodic and everything is bite-sized.
Hmm.
I now have Microsoft Viva telling me what I'm doing through the day, which is and giving me an idea to say what, where am I spending time and where I'm, which is irony in itself, right? So
Correct. Correct. But those are the times that we live in. Fair. Fair. No, I think those are the only hot seat questions that I had with you, Anil. Had for you, Anil.
you are very gentle, I must tell you.
No, no. After such a lovely, enriching, and beautiful discussion, we didn't want to take too much away from that. It was just to have a little bit of fun and create a little bit of a light moment towards the end of the conversation. But thank you very, very much for doing this, Anil. I think both Sharan and I learned tremendously. I'm sure our listeners would have learned a lot. And once we put this out, I'm sure all of them will be fairly very encouraged by all the content that they will get to learn from here, all the pearls of wisdom that they'll get from here. But also they might have some questions, some clarifications, etc. And we will then take the liberty to reach out to you and possibly get your responses on those, so that we could complete the learning loop in their heads. Yeah, but real pleasure to have you.
Thank you for joining us, Anil. The 50th episode is also going to be our longest episode.
I mean,
And I'm
thank
sure
you. It
the
was a wonderful
length is worth
conversation.
it.
It
Absolutely.
was a it was a wonderful conversation. Firstly, congratulations on doing this. I'm sure it's taking a lot of commitment from both of you. So, congratulations on doing this and keep doing it. It's very good that you're keeping the conversation space and both learning for yourselves, for us who are coming in, for those of us who are consuming the content on a regular basis. So, well done. And I wish you all the best. Yeah, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Anil.
Thank you, Anil. See you.
Thank you for listening to CoBB, Conversations on the Business of Brands with Sudeep Chawla and Sharan Raghavan. Subscribe and learn more at cobcast.net. That's CoBBcast.net.